Okay, so I wanna share a few dreams that I had recently and then relate them to some of my own life circumstances and then share a few thoughts. Dream number one. What happened in that dream? I was in almost seemed like a very old Soviet town, which was completely frozen, like icy, and like one of those Siberian towns that you see, like how do people survive here? I was like in that kind of town. The atmosphere was like bluish. There was a lot of snow and ice, and my parents, who did not seem old, they seemed somewhat young, middle aged maybe at most. They were saying goodbye to me because they were going somewhere. And I didn't really understand where they were going, why they were going there. Maybe my mother needed some treatment, I don't know. So that was like the context of the first dream. You can sort of think of it as a gentle introduction to what is about to happen. In dream number two, I was in the middle of a forest, but it wasn't like a dark forest. It was shiny, bright. And then I saw my mother, who was, you could say she was in her prime. She didn't look old at all. I don't remember how she looked, but she didn't look old. She looked young. And I remember her, she was very happy. She was really happy. She was smiling, and then she was telling me goodbye. Um, and then at that moment, I remember being very sad because I thought that was the last time I would see her. But it was a positive dream, so to speak. She was just saying goodbye. And then she went the other direction. Dream number three I had happened on the campus of an American university where I studied. And on top of the library, it was really dark at night. It was really dark, and the thunderstorms were coming. Thunder was coming, so it was like really dark. And on top of the library, my father was praying. No, my father is a Muslim, right? We are Muslims. And he was in a white dress, like the Saudis, they wear the white dress. And he was praying, and I went to the top of the library and I told him to calm down. You know, the thunder is coming, calm down. And he said, no, I will finish my prayer, then I will calm down. Right? So I will calm down after I finish my prayer. And then I came down in some room. We were talking with some people. I was negotiating with somebody about some airplane or some bicycle or like some mode of transportation. And then my father came, and then I offered like $50 or something, 50 something dollars. And my father was like, yeah, this is a pretty good deal. That was that. The last dream I had in this sequence was this morning. I had a good breakfast, and then I decided to take a nap. It was in the morning, before lunch, after breakfast. And then I saw my mother again in the morning. We were in a hotel, in a large hotel, like a modern but also Soviet hotel. And something happened, and then she disappeared. And then I started looking for her. And I got so anxious and worried, and I had this feeling that she is really gone. That I will never find her. And I remember being so sad that when I woke up, the that sadness was echoing in the room, you could say. Now, dreams are messages from the unconscious, from from the viewpoint of Carl Jung's psychoanalysis. That's what dreams are. And if you look at what is happening in my real life, my mother is actually sick, and she's sick with cancer that is really advanced. So advanced that surgery is out of the option. And every time I talk with her on the phone, she lives in a different country. Every time I talk with her, she seems so weak that I cannot help but cry almost, because she's only 50 something, and then this cancer is almost eating her alive. She has aged so much just in the last few years. And then you look at these things, right? And then you start thinking, and there is a few important things to pay attention to here. The first thing is, the unconscious is certainly trying to tell me something. It is trying to tell me something because the unconscious has that, sometimes if you read the literature, you think of the unconscious as some beast, some wild beast, kills everything that comes in the way. But the unconscious also has that nurturing side. The unconscious has that nurturing side that you would see in a mother. So the unconscious is so gentle with me right now, it's somewhat preparing me. It is telling me that there is going to be a huge psychological shock that's about to come, and I'm preparing you, just so you know certain things are about to happen. And so say what you want to say and do what you want to do before this date comes, because it has already been decided that this date will come. And given the urgency of my dreams, the date might be sooner than one might think. So just pay attention to how caring and how nurturing the unconscious is. Right? It has that motherly element to it. I'm not saying that the unconscious cannot be violent, but I'm just saying that it's a very paradoxical thing, the unconscious. It can have multiple opposing qualities at the same time. But deep down, it's also a very caring. The unconscious cares about you. So in some sense, it's preparing me psychologically for the damage that's perhaps about to come. Right? Because even look at the last dream, the hotel. I mean, hotel, what is a hotel? Hotel is a place where you temporarily stay, which is what this life is. This life is a temporary stay. The hotel is a symbol for this life. Right? And look at how the unconscious is portraying death. Because we consciously in this world always view death as a bad thing. It's like a negative thing. It's something that we should be scared of. And it is a day of great mourning for us. We cry, we are sad eternally. But look how the unconscious is looking at it. In my second dream, where I was in a forest and my mother was saying goodbye, she was happy. She wasn't sad, she wasn't crying. I mean, I was crying because of my attachment to my mother, but she wasn't crying. She looked very happy. She looked really young, and she looked very happy. She was almost trying to tell me that everything is going to be okay. Don't worry. And I feel like even though my mother is still alive, I feel like her soul has already crossed the threshold, because she's not talking to me from that other side. And this second dream where I saw her in the forest, this dream occurred at 4:57 a.m., which is a kind of an important timing if you look at it, because 4:57 a.m. is like that twilight zone where the night ends and the day begins. But the night has ended, so to speak, almost, but the day hasn't begun yet. So it's like that transitionary phase, that middle ground, when you are crossing the threshold. That's when the dream occurred. So I think the timing is quite symbolic also. Right, so the unconscious, I think, fundamentally looks at death as a positive thing. It doesn't look at it as a negative thing. Right? The conscious mind looks at death as like a terrible tragedy, but I think for the unconscious, the death is like a wedding that is to be celebrated. Right? In alchemical manuscripts, you read about Mysterium Connuncio, or whatever they call it, right? The mystical union. So I think the unconscious looks at that as like a union of what was disassociated. And what happens at that level in the unconscious, I don't know. And we don't know because we are still alive. But from the dreams, you see that the dead are happy. They are happy, so I feel like the viewpoint of the unconscious is that it's a positive thing. And maybe that's why in a lot of the cultures, when somebody dies, people like cook food and eat, and it is like a celebration that the night is over. But who knows? And the dream about my father praying, I think he's dealing with it in his own way. Whenever I talk with him, he seems very reluctant to let go, and for good reasons. But I think if there is one thing that I've learned in this life, it is that we have to learn to let go. I think that's what adulting really is. I think adulting is learning how to let go. Like, you have everything as a child, and as you grow older, you just have to keep letting go. You have to keep letting go. And I think holding on to things will not help. One might say that these dreams are not messages, but your fantasies that you are using to sort of cope with the reality. But we see from history that maybe it is not like that. If you read the autobiography of Carl Jung, he talks there specifically about the death of his mother. He says before his mother died, he had a dream. Carl Jung had a dream where his father showed up in the dream. His father, who was long dead, showed up in the dream and was asking Jung for relationship advice. Right? Because his son is now a famous psychologist. And so he was asking him for relationship advice. And then Jung woke up and didn't really understand what was happening. He didn't really understand what was happening. And then many years later, when, not many years, I think many months later, the mother passed away. Or like sometime in the future, the mother passes away. And then after a while, Jung realizes, his father heard the news that his wife was about to cross the threshold of death, and so he came to his son to ask about relationship advice. I haven't seen her in such a long time. What would you recommend, And so I feel like when somebody is on the verge of death, a certain voice echoes in the world of the unconscious, in the world of the dead, to let them know that a certain guest is about to visit. So then they become aware, so to speak, of these things, right? So Jung was one of those people who believed that if you dream of somebody dying, then that person has been marked already. And the unconscious, at least in my case, I think, is trying to gently prepare me. Because if you're not prepared, I think the damage can be quite large. The damage to your psyche can be pretty bad. And so I think it's gently preparing for what is about to come. And so if we look at these things from the viewpoint of the unconscious, I think the unconscious would want us to think of this as like a secret marriage, as a mystical union, as a happy thing, not as a sad thing that, this person is lost forever. The unconscious does not view death as an end. The unconscious views death only as a beginning. Right? Death and birth for the unconscious are like two sides of the same coin. And so when something dies, another thing gets reborn. Right? Like when a fruit falls to the ground and, the seeds get absorbed to the ground, a new tree comes out alive. So death is only a beginning. And I think when people die, we should rejoice. Of course, there is going to be sadness because it is our mothers, our fathers, our family members, our fellow human beings who are being let go. And so the conscious mind cannot fathom how death can be a happy thing. But the unconscious, which is the eternal source of wisdom, mind you, look how the unconscious is looking at this thing. The unconscious is looking at this. The unconscious is looking at death as a happy thing. My mother was happy when I saw her. I was the one who was crying. There is another thing that I think is important to discuss in this regard. One of my friends, she had a sequence of dreams about me that I think it is important to discuss them. Dream number 1. I was in the middle of a large field. The weather was grayish, just about to rain. Right? Pay attention, right? The weather was just about to rain, and it was like a huge field with a bunch of flowers, mountains, and then in the back there were like these trees, large, long trees. And I was in the middle of the field, and I was picking flowers, and I was picking them very carefully. Dream number 2, I was in a dark street. I was sitting on a bench, and the light was on. But besides the light and me, there was nothing else visible. Everything was dark. And I was reading a book, and according to the friend, I was very sad and sort of depressed. Melancholic, you could say. And I was reading the book. And in the third dream, out of and in the second dream, I forgot to mention, it has already rained. right? The rain it was already rain, so the earth was damp, how it usually is after rain. And in the third dream, a certain beautiful, I was in the forest, and the storm has passed already, and it was nice and sky nice, and in my hands there was this um, flower that was made out of glass. And it has thorns in it, like pointy thorns, but the thorns were turned inwards, not outwards, inwards. And according to the friend, the flower looked so beautiful. And I was holding this flower that had, right, like thorny flower, but with the horns pointed inwards. And according to my friend, the flower looked so beautiful, and it would not have been beautiful if it weren't for the thorns, right? And then sort of everything disappears, and then a beautiful rose appears out of nowhere, really beautiful rose that had this like red spot in it. And then the rose disappears, and then I appear, right, sitting on the bench reading that book. And so this sequence of dreams is just absolutely crazy. The first part, where the storm is about to come, is, well, obviously something is about to happen in my life, something large. A storm is coming, obviously. You know, with my mother being sick and everything. So sooner or later, the storm is going to come. And I was picking roses for her very carefully. And if you look at the landscape, there were like these, it looks like the unconscious landscape, right? Like there were these large trees. It was almost like I was protected. The unconscious is protecting me. It's saying, hey, you'll be okay. You will not fall off the face of earth. These, on the background, there were like these large trees that were sort of protecting me, keeping me grounded. And look at the symbolism of the rose. A rose, usually a flower, is usually a symbol for the self. It's a symbol for the self. And look how the thorns were pushed inwards. So all the internal suffering, right? Look what it's saying, like all the internal suffering that will happen as a result of this will only make you more beautiful. Your soul will develop further, yourself will develop further as a result of all of this internalized suffering that you went through as a result of the storm in your life, right? And from a psychoanalytic point of view, mother is usually a very important symbol. A mother is usually a very important symbol for the following reason. Usually, when a child is born, the child already has an image of the great mother in his psyche. So when you're born, before you even open your eyes and see your mother, you already have an image of a great mother in your psyche. Your psyche doesn't come empty when you're born. The image of the great mother, the image of the great father, they're all there. And so when you open your eyes and see your mother, you project an image onto her. The mother who knows everything, who will save you every time, who's a great hero. And the same thing goes for fathers. Like a lot of times girls will look at their fathers as like some hero who can do everything. And all of this is fundamentally a projection of the unconscious contents into the real mother and the real father. And then, the daughter might grow up and realize that her father is actually a big loser and that he's not the hero that she thought he was. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that that image is projected onto our parents. The image of the great mother, in the case of a child, of a son, is projected onto his own mother. And as long as the mother is alive, she will carry that image. As long as the mother is alive, she will carry that image of a great mother with her. And sooner or later, the task remains before the child that he must internalize that image. Do you see what I mean? Mother, at some point, will not be somebody that you will externally seek. Mother will be something and somebody that you have to seek internally. You have to assimilate the motherly qualities to yourself. Right? The individuation process happens when yourself develops further and you grow and grow and grow. But how do you grow? You add things. You assimilate qualities. And just like every man should have feminine qualities and every woman should have masculine qualities, so does every child sooner or later, no matter how grown up he is, he must sooner or later assimilate the qualities of the mother and the father in him because he needs them. Right? I mean, Nietzsche said that every man has to be his own physician, for example. Meaning that the qualities of a doctor, you must internalize them yourself. And so I think what the dream was saying is that maybe soon there won't be a mother anymore. And so as a result of that, the qualities, the mother qualities, you will have to internalize them if you haven't done so already. And by internalizing the qualities of the great mother into yourself, you will become beautiful like this rose. Because the death of somebody will bring about tremendous suffering, like the thorns that are pointed inside. And that suffering will force you to internalize the qualities of the mother in you. And look what my friend was saying. She was saying that the rose became beautiful precisely because the thorns were pointed inside, and that if it wasn't for that, the rose would not have been beautiful. Right? So there comes a task before every child to internalize those qualities. And mother will no longer be found outside, that she will be found on the inside. So that's sort of like another point of view you could take on these things. Right? Because again, look what the unconscious is saying, that death is always a new beginning. It's an opportunity to grow further. I'm not saying that people want to grow further. If somebody's family is dying, if you go and tell them that this is an opportunity for you to grow, I think they'll just be confused. They're like, what are you talking about? Here, a very close person to me has died, and you're out here talking about opportunities for growth. But that's how the unconscious thinks. The unconscious is always thinking of growth, development, personality development. That's what the unconscious wants. And in these sequences of dreams, I think it is saying that as a result of this suffering will come a very beautiful development. So it's a very sort of strange set of circumstances that gives rise to a lot of thoughts and ideas, and it can be pretty interesting, I think. But who knows, maybe 5-10 years from now I will reflect on these things again and realize that perhaps I have not understood anything, that perhaps I have misunderstood everything. Who knows?